from losing 5% a year to growing 20% a year in less than 18 months. I'm a big believer that business is about relationships. I think that the focus has changed from creating a business that does something and gives you money to I just want the money. It gives them a better product and makes us look better for them and look to us for the next project. Sometimes things that were luxuries have become table stakes, either because the market shifted, the customer expectation has shifted, or the competition has shifted.
Hello, everybody. What if I told you at 65 you could be running a six-figure business, outpacing younger entrepreneurs and having the time of your life? My guest today, Win Adestino, is a living proof that age is just a number and resilience is the real game changer. From battling cancer to facing brutal bullying, from witnessing his son's near death experience to making bold moves in Silicon Valley, Boston, Nashville, Win has seen it all. Today, we are diving deep into the brutal myths of entrepreneurship, the AI revolution, and the secrets behind making tech pay off big. Stay till the end because we are about to blow up the biggest lies about success you've ever heard. Win, thank you so much for joining me on the Desai show.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Most welcome. When your life story is a testament to resilience, from battling cancer and bullying and the near death experience of your kid, and that's a lot to take. How have these shaped your approach to business and leadership? And would you mind even sharing a little bit of this journey with the audience?
My approach to leadership and business are kind of symbiotic. I think they both helped each other. I was able to get through some of those things because of my thoughts about business and relationships, and they helped me focus on understanding what's really important. So the two go together. During the pandemic, I started doing teaching at some universities because they needed some online instructors, and I'm not a professor, I'm a professional, right? So what they get from me is more industry knowledge, and they all want to know what life is like after they cross the mucous membrane into the working world, especially engineers. Every experience you have and everything that you learn polishes the lens through which you look at the world. And so no two people look at the world the same way. My son, who's now 21, carjacking came later in life. The bullying in grammar school and high school came much earlier. And so the things that I had, the tools that I had, and the life experiences to help me deal with those things were different through that entire journey. Well, as a kid, I was lucky that I grew up in a time where even though bullying was a rite of passage, you were safe when you closed the door. Now that's not the case because there's
No.
bullying and you're not even safe in your own home. So the tools that I used then wouldn't work for someone today. I was lucky that I had a very strong support system in my family, and I had some things that really were life desires for me. I'm grateful for the fact that the bullying I had as a kid turned into tenacity and drive instead of just giving up. It taught me some resilience, and that sometimes you have to change your path and you can still get to where the meaningful part of where you want to be.
So true and so well said. And thank you for sharing that vulnerable story with us. It's always easy people to hear, but it's always hard to share. I had a experience where these young kids were, tailgating me, and that time my kids were really young. I had a baby and a toddler, and that really scared the shit out of me because I honked at them. That's all, and they kept on following me on GPS, started putting police station. Can you believe they actually followed me all the way to the police station till they realized where I got them? And that's when they left. And it was scary. And thankfully they didn't have any guns. They were just high school, young kids, college kids on a jerky ride. And people think failure means the end of the road, but here's a wild stat: 90% of startup founders who failed once are more likely to succeed the second time. The real question is, did you fail? What did you learn that, made you unstoppable?
I wouldn't say unstoppable. I think that I've learned a lot with success and honestly more with failure. If you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself up enough and you're not growing. When I started out, I had a very idealistic view about the way businesses should be run. And so I made some decisions that made it harder for me to run the business for sure.
Mhm.
I had less cash, less flexibility available. I'm a big believer that business is about relationships. I remember I always wanted to appear like the business, I don't want to say bigger, but the business was more professional than maybe it was, because I didn't want people to worry that they were dealing with a company that, may not exist for,
Yeah.
or may not be able to produce for them. I had a small credit line at the bank. It was $50,000, and it was a very small neighborhoody bank. They had one branch, and I still bank with them. And I used to put together this loosely binder with, you know, goals for the company and, you know, last year's tax return and this year's tax return projections and all kinds of support material. And I gave it to them in quarterly results. And I would, go to the bank, and the guy with the loan officer would say, most people who work with us come in with a shoebox of receipts. So this is really nice. And that paid off, because a couple of years later, we were having a really bad year. And I came in and he looked at me and he said, you are not running a viable business. You should know that. And we're not going to abandon you, but you obviously don't need $50,000 if you're running the business like this. We're going to cut the credit line down, but we're not going to keep you high and dry. I think if I had just jumped from bank to bank to get the best rate every year and not built that relationship,
Yes.
very different story. And I tell that story whenever people say bankers love you when you can pay them back, and they hate you when you can't pay them back. But this was a story where together we worked on it. And then the next year, the business was growing again, and they actually doubled the original credit line. So it's all really about relationships. I grew from the cancer experience a lot. We were, at that point, the business had grown a lot. I had 8 employees. We had 5,000 square feet in an old mill building. We were doing some manufacturing for clients. And I had a client who had ordered $250,000 worth of stuff from us. And I had 4 projects going at once. And then I got diagnosed with the cancer. And I had to step out of the business for a while. I was there every day, but honestly wasn't contributing that much. And during my recovery, things started unraveling. The guy who ran the business that we were providing to was getting a divorce. His wife found out that he had a girlfriend. She went to the bank and had his credit line pulled, so he couldn't pay me. My credit line was secured by our house, and it was no longer $50,000. It was $250,000, and we could have lost the house. I had to completely change the benefits package and how I was compensating everyone. And I came in with my tail between my legs and my head in my hand, and I was very transparent and laid it all out. They were all young kids. And I said, look, you all have obligations, and we've built a great team here, and we've worked together for years. But I understand some of you have families, you have some financial goals. It's my goal to try to turn the company around. You guys were making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 as kids a couple years out of school. They must have gotten incredible training and experience at my company, and because it was trial by fire. They all worked directly with customers, doing design work and figuring things out. They all had offers in 6 weeks, and they were all gone in 8 weeks. And I was down to me alone. I went from $250,000 in debt in May of that year to posting $1,000 profit in December. And it was lots of hard work. And I went back to work before I was supposed to, and was having a lot of anxiety about it because of the cancer and everything, and I'm fine now. It's 12 years. Steve Jobs said you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So that's sort of the story with me too.
You literally answered my next question, which was that one decision that made you a shitload of money and one that almost bankrupted you. It was so well said, because the audience already has that answer. And your resilience totally shines on you. Mark Cuban said only morons start businesses on loans. A lot of people laughed at him. Fast forward to today, we are seeing over leveraged startups crumble, while scrappy entrepreneurs like Win are building 6 to 7 figure businesses debt free without investors. What is the secret, Win?
I think the secret is to go into business for the right reason. Those companies that are highly leveraged with venture capital, 50 years ago, that vehicle wasn't even available. So people finance their companies with bank loans, with credit lines. The focus has changed a lot. You look in Silicon Valley, the C-suite in some of the smallest companies there is larger than the C-suite in some of the largest companies outside of Silicon Valley. And part of it is they all want a piece of that, original stock set so they can get all of these great returns if the company does really well, or get more of the money from the venture capital. There's an old saying that the extra mile is never crowded. I've run businesses where I've concentrated more on the culture of the business than the profit in my pocket. I took the chance to do some manufacturing for clients who wanted designs but then didn't know what to do with them. A big part of my career has been helping people get into high tech, kicking and screaming, but doing it safely.
Yeah.
And we took a flyer on doing some manufacturing, and we went from $700,000 with 8 employees to $1.5 million with the same employees and a couple of subcontractors doing building for us.
Yeah.
And it made everybody a lot of money. And we did that for a number of years.
This is such a great conversation because 60% of businesses make zero profit. Yet people are still out there thinking a logo and an Instagram account is a business plan because they don't know their niche. They don't know the numbers. They don't understand there is no bad product. It's because you just need to know how to sell. And people can sell anything they want to, they just need the courage to do so. I want to start moving on to a little bit about the AI and the tech revolution
Sure.
with you.
Sure.
And I remember when people thought the internet would destroy jobs, right? The same fear is happening with AI. But the real kicker is that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been even created yet. AI is either your biggest opportunity or your biggest threat. How do Win entrepreneurs stop fearing it and start leveraging it?
Okay. So the one thing you need to know about me is that I see patterns and analogies that other people don't see. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an analogy first. In business, there's a difference between delegation and abdication, right? If there's something you don't want to do and you delegate it to someone, that's fine. They may be better at it. They may be more enthusiastic about it. If you're someone who will do the same thing with AI, this is my job. I'm just going to have it write copy. I'm just going to have it make a graphic. I'm just going to have it whatever. And you either don't have the expertise or the interest to look at what comes back and make it your own, then it's going to be a failure. Your quality is going to go down, right? But if you have the skills and the interest to at least use it as a tool instead of a replacement for you, then you're actually adding more value. It's funny, I got into a discussion with my sister a couple of months ago that she's a teacher, and she said the opportunities that our parents had and our grandparents had aren't there for us today. And I said, no, there's way more opportunities,
Yeah.
right? You just need to know what they are and you need to seek them out. Sometimes opportunity doesn't knock. Sometimes you have to go out to the street and drag it in. You have to be open to seeing what is there. And manifestation is not something that makes things happen. It's not magic, but it lets you manage the way you view the world so you can see opportunities that you wouldn't have seen without the manifestation.
Yeah, so true.
If you understand how to use it as a tool to make more efficient the things that are holding you back, but you still add the value, you don't have to worry about being replaced.
This reminded me when I had a conversation with one parent a couple weeks back where they said, "My son, we are going to make sure he doesn't get into the IT sector or the engineering field." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because we just want them to go into medicine because medicine is never going to be replaced." And I said, "You're thinking the technology is going to be replaced?" Because he can choose from anything in this world if he's becoming an engineer. Like, we're not going to start living in Mars. Like, we're still going to be in Earth, and humans are the ones who've created AI. So there is going to be an opportunity for everything. Let your child pursue what they want to pursue. There is going to be space and opportunity for every single person if you find what you're looking for.
Well, yeah, and it's funny that they think that medicine is not ever going to be replaced because there are tons of places. You may never replace doctors, but medicine is not doctors, right?
Yep.
I would never make a good doctor because there's a lot of medicine that requires memorization, right? And immediate recall. And I was in Silicon Valley. There was a company that had a robot arm making pizzas, but I still would rather eat the pizza at Tony's in San Francisco that was handmade, right? It just, there's a level of quality and a level of, how much of it is automatable and how much of it is the human part that needs to be there.
I wanted to ask you that you work with companies adding tech to their products.
I do.
Where do you think they screw up the most?
They screw up the most in a very general case by not taking the time to understand the technology and the market that it's going into. But it usually manifests itself as my competitor just did this. I want to do the same thing. Right. And so much of my career has been that way. That the company that I mentioned earlier, I joined them because one of their competitors in Europe was using microcomputer chips in their product. It was very early on in the early 1980s. And
Yeah.
somebody in Europe made a version of their product that had a microprocessor in it with a display. They were stealing market share in Europe. It's a complex thing. They found me and I joined them and they said, we just want to do what these guys did. And I said, why? Well, because that's what they did. And I said, well, let's think about how the technology is actually being used in this
Right.
application. And instead of the user interface that their competitor did, which was the equivalent of a telephone or a calculator with a keypad, we digitally replicated the more intuitive interface that they had with their analog controls from before. And it got to be so incredibly popular that today, 40 years later, they still have some piece of that interface in a different form because there's touchscreens now in the way that customers interact with their product. I forced them to take the time to look at what technology was right for the application in the marketplace and not just copy what their competitor did.
Mm.
And so the mistake they make is just not understanding the mapping of technology and marketplace and figuring out the value proposition. I get into value proposition arguments with people all the time because customers say, well, if we just market it right, and I'm like, well, what does marketing mean to you? Marketing is convincing your customer that you have a value proposition for them that's higher than the other person. So
Right.
because their dollar can only go in one place. Marketing is incredibly important, right? You can't, and there's a market for everything. You can't look much further than pet rocks to know that there's a market for literally everything if you position it properly.
Yeah.
But you need to understand what to tell people about it to get some kind of emotional connection between them and your offer. And
Yeah.
that's what's missing.
Right. And I had some facts to tell the audience that the global AI market is expected to hit $1.5 trillion by 2030. But here's the kicker that 90% of businesses are using AI wrong. The real money isn't in AI itself, it's in how you integrate it with your business model. And when you are an engineer at heart, so where's the real money making intersection between tech and businesses that nobody's talking about?
The money making is when a customer decides to buy your product over somebody else's or keeping the money in their pocket, right? And that comes from understanding the market that you're in and what's driving them. To come full circle to doctors, when I was working for a big semiconductor company in California, we had a market segment for medical products. And everybody wanted to bring biomed engineers in to ask them what they wanted us to make. And I said, no, 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 we're not going to do that. We're going to bring doctors in and ask them what problems they're asking the biomeds to solve for them. And now we know not the voice of the customer, but the voice of the customer's customer. And we took that market segment with a couple of other things for sure, um, losing 5% a year to growing 20% a year in less than 18 months.
Wow.
And that's where the real money is. It's understanding what and predicting what the actual market need is.
Correct.
I do a lot of lecturing at universities and in various things. And I have one lecture that is sales and marketing for non-sales and marketing professionals, because Most engineers think there's no use for marketing and salespeople. They're just there, and we're doing the real work. And when they realize that they wouldn't even have a paycheck if the salespeople couldn't sell it, then it starts turning their heads. And marketing is about their pieces. Marketing is about navigation. It's about figuring out how to get your customer who's on a journey to come by you, or to figure out where they're going to be and get there before they get there, right?
Mhm.
Branding is about what they say about you when you're not in the room and how you show up. And
Right.
so that creates an emotional bond between you and them. And I can go through the list of things that have nothing to do with anything you can learn in MBA school in those terms, but they're very practical views, analogies, if you will, of the activity of marketing. And part of it is really understanding where that market's going and what's driving the people that are in it and what their challenges are today so that you can address them. I worked with a guy who wanted all the salespeople to talk about his 3 pillars that were so important. And I said, do you think that any of your competitors are there an hour earlier pitching to the same customer and saying that they are, they take longer in lifetime value, or they take, whatever. So they're all saying the same thing. What you want to do is make customers decide for themselves, hey, if I go with this company, I will lower my barrier to entry. I will lower my cost of ownership. If you tell them that, they're going to be like, yeah, you're a sales guy, you're a used cars guy. What else are you going to say? But if you let them draw that conclusion based on you helping them figure out how to solve their problems with your product,
Yeah.
then you've left the salesperson in the room when you leave because they sold themselves, right? People spend money to reduce pain or increase pleasure. If not, the money stays in their pocket, right?
I love that approach, Vin. That is so well said. And all your wit and intelligence is coming out so beautifully. I can go on chatting with you probably for hours. I want to end this segment with just one question, but I don't want to tell the audience, and it's like I want to bust a myth over here that AI will replace jobs. Wrong. AI isn't replacing people, it's replacing lazy people who refuse to adapt. The question isn't will AI take your jobs? It's will someone using AI take your job? So, to end this segment, I just want to ask a quick question around the AI tools. Is there one AI tool or innovation that's actually worth investing in right now for entrepreneurs, especially tech entrepreneurs?
I think that, look, AI is a technology that's very interesting. It draws no absolute conclusion. It is about probability and statistics, right? It says
Mhm.
there's a good chance that it's going to be like this, right? And so I think that using it in places where you have some flexibility in outcome and you want a different perspective on it than the way you'd look at it is really important and valuable. However, it's all about the training data.
Mhm.
And if you're using AI that does nothing but go out to the web and aggregate information from the web, you've got correct and incorrect information out there that it's drawing conclusions from. And it's going to say, well, I've seen more of this than this, so this is probably correct. And but there could be tons of misinformation on a topic out there, and all you're doing is perpetuating the misinformation.
Mhm.
And so I would start using AI for things that you understand well enough that you can immediately call BS on something that it comes back with until
Yeah.
you get a solution that you can trust in the way, prompts are everything. The way you write prompts, the way you refine the result based on asking additional questions. When you get a template that you like, that gives you results that you can be confident in, that's a time to cut over more activity to that and move on to the next one. And I think doing it in steps versus saying, well, I've just got these things. Somebody said, well, you can automate that. And I said, never automate something you don't understand. That is
Mhm.
the most valuable thing. If you try to automate something you don't understand,
So
you will
true.
never know when it's wrong.
What a wise advice.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So
Thank you. That was wonderful. I hope everybody's getting the gold nuggets. And if you didn't have a pen and paper, you can rewind, play as many times as you want. I want to start moving on to the third segment, which is about the money talk. And all the entrepreneurs love to hear about that conversation. Amazon, Uber, Airbnb, what did they all have in common? They built billion-dollar businesses without owning the products they sell. High margins, low expenses, and that was their winning formula. And when you are running $500,000 business with just two part-time and a VA, how do you keep margins high and the expenses low?
There's two things. I'm pretty selective about the customers that I work with. The cost of acquisition is incredibly high for businesses. And so if you build those relationships, your cost of acquisition goes down. If you pick the projects that are very long term, the number of acquisitions you have to do is much lower. And so the money that I would be burning, spending 3 or 4 months trying to do a sales cycle on a new client, if I get another project with an existing client, that helps a lot. It also means that the quality of our deliverable goes up because we're more familiar with the business. We have the knowledge of having worked with another division or another department or another product of theirs. Don't discount the relationship part of profit margin. Relationship is what builds trust. They would be willing, in most cases, to split some of the cost of that learning part because they know they'll get something better for you. And if you have the kind of model where anything you learn, you impart on them, you're also growing their organization. I promise my customers that I will not work with a competitor of theirs on the same kind of thing as long as I'm working with that. And that means I can charge more because they know that there's going to be some downtime if they drop me. And so they will sometimes say, look, we'll give you 2.5 years worth of work, but we want a lower rate. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I have never been the kind of consultant that wants to get my claws in you so that I can't leave you or you won't be successful. The area of fulfillment that I get involved in a lot is helping them do e-learning solutions that are either customer facing or internal because I have an expertise in that sort of arc of asynchronous learning. And so when you are, for example, if you're a lecturer in a room live, even the least astute lecturer can see who's tuned in and who's tuned out and who's confused and who's getting it. And they can alter what or how they're presenting material in order to try to get everybody together. And you have much less of that luxury if you're doing it remotely live, and you have none of that luxury if you're doing it as an asynchronous class that people are taking whenever they want. And so managing their brain chemistry while they're going through the course to give them hits of dopamine so they want to continue going forward, to avoid the fight or flight response when they think that they're lost and not understanding it, to give them tools to feel like they will understand it if they put the time in. Those are all things that most people don't consider when they build e-learning. And so I get involved in helping them do that.
Thank you, Vin. That was incredible information. 2008, 2020, and now 2025. Every few years, the economy shifts, and only the ones who adapt survive. You've been in the game long enough to see economic crashes, tech bubbles, booms. So, what's that one money move that will protect entrepreneurs in 2025 and beyond? Because I've also seen that 80% of small businesses fail because of cash flow problems and not competitions. It's just bad ideas or not bad ideas.
I think the first thing I learned from some of the disasters is that you can't necessarily count on a constant cash flow. And so you have to have some reserve there and realize that as soon as you start kicking into that reserve even a little bit, you have to change your viewpoint either from far out to close in, or if you've just been concentrating on close in and fulfillment, further out so that you can make the organization a little more resilient. And you may have to make some very tough decisions on personnel, infrastructure, on even rent. When I went through that situation with the cancer and everything, I went to my landlord and said, look, I've got 5,000 square feet in your 30,000 square foot building. I don't want to leave you high and dry. It's my intention to turn this business around, but I can't pay this rent fully while I'm going from zero to something, right? So I will work out. I made a proposal. X number of months with no rent, X number of months with half rent, and then back to full rent. And if I was successful in turning things around, I would pay them back the back rent. So they took a chance, I took a chance, and it, worked out for them.
That's incredible.
Thinking things in a different way so that you can stretch out the cash that you have in reserve and keeping that cash. It's nice to have all the best new tools and all the best, furnishings in your business. You need to be professional, and you shouldn't starve your people for, sharing a tool that everybody needs every day or something like that just to save $1.
Yeah.
You need to figure out a balance, and that balance is going to change based on the outlook of the company. No one anticipates a tornado. No one anticipates COVID. And even companies with the biggest reserves had trouble during COVID because it went so long and had
Right.
some really hard decisions. But you have to be prepared to make those hard decisions, and you have to be willing to make some personal sacrifices. A lot of people say the Catholic Church has some money if they get divested of all the poor people. Well, if you do the math, every poor person gets 50 cents. So it doesn't solve the problem, even though you think it might. So managing your culture in a way that everybody understands, being transparent about things the whole time, and managing your cash reserves, and even things that you might have to flip a switch on, like a credit line that you hardly ever use, but you may need to go into it in tough times, knowing that you're going to have to pay it back at the end or something. These are hard decisions that entrepreneurs need to make. And if you're not willing to make them, then, you're not prepared to run that business. It doesn't mean that you can't be an entrepreneur. I know 2 people who loved working on the bench. They started a company and they hired someone to run it for them. And they said, look, I'm not good at these decisions. I don't like managing people, but I really like this business and this market. And I really love coming in and tinkering on the bench. You run it for me. I still own it. And for them, that worked out incredibly well. The business did well. They did what they enjoyed doing, right? People need to understand that entrepreneurs view the world differently than everybody else. They sacrifice things at home for the work. They sacrifice work for family. They're completely intertwined, and most people can't understand that. And they get annoyed if you respond to a text while you're, out at a baseball game or something. It's like, you know what? My world is different than yours, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Better or worse, but it's different. The other is the way we view the world. When an average person walks down the street and they see something cool, they go, "Oh, that's really cool," and they walk on. And entrepreneurs look at it and go, "Wow, that's really cool. Can I use that to help solve some of my customers' problems?" Right? The thought process just flips to something else.
Right. Last question in this segment for you. Investment decisions can make or break a business, but what criteria do you use when deciding where to allocate resources, and how do you actually assess potential returns on investment?
As a small business with not a lot of employees, I look at it differently than a lot of people would. But the first thing I do is say to myself, how does this somehow add value to my clients? If it adds value to them, I may be able to do more for them with less resources, which means I get more money and it can pay for it. Or I can step up the value of what I present to my customers, which means I can charge more for it, which also increases my profit. That lets me pay it off. So that's the first criteria is market value. The other is to look at the shifting of the business that I'm in. And is this investment somehow table stakes now, where 2 or 10 years ago it would have been a luxury, right? I've been in corporations, and to do a capital investment, you always have to do some kind of justification, right? Electric typewriters used to cost more than $1,000, and you would have to do a CapEx paperwork for a typewriter. And it's like, you just hired a new secretary. If you don't buy that typewriter, what are they going to be working on? So it's not tied as it's now table stakes for having another department secretary. They need a typewriter, or they need a computer later on. Or if you hire an engineer, they need a set of tools or a scope or soldering iron. So sometimes things that were luxuries have become table stakes either because the market shifted, the customer expectation has shifted, or the competition has shifted. And for you to keep up, you have to make the expense, even if it doesn't seem to have ROI, other than not reducing your profit going forward. I remember arguing with the CEO about the company wanted to make an investment in a next generation product. And he said, I want to see an ROI for it that's zero based, meaning I'm selling $30 million now. If this product, I want you to show me that I'm making 40. I sat in the room as the lone engineer. I was 28 or something. And these guys are all in their 40s running this business, and it was very successful. And I'm thinking, why does my opinion matter? I shouldn't say anything. And finally, I raised my hand and I said, I think we're doing this wrong because you're assuming that you will always make $30 million a year with the product that you have. And so 30 can't be your zero, because if you do nothing, in 5 years, it'll be 28 million. In 10 years, it'll be 22 million. And if you don't make this investment, you're going to see your sales go down over time. If you make this investment and you just see it stay steady, that difference between the loss you'd have if you did nothing and the zero growth that you have from now becomes the profit on that investment. And everybody in the room was like, huh. So just looking at it differently than other people sometimes helps. So
Wow, that's incredible, Vin. I have learned so much from you today as an entrepreneur, and I hope everybody is listening as well, because this is a lot of gold nuggets coming from Vin. Vin, while we are wrapping up this episode, I have something really fun, short, quirky, and only one-liners, which is the rapid fire.
okay.
So, are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right. What's one piece of advice that people love to give, but it's absolutely bullshit?
That there's something like a morning formula or cold plunges or whatever that you have to do or you won't be successful.
If you could go back in time, what's one mistake you'd never repeat?
Running out of cash.
What's your biggest regret in business?
That I was a little too timid on things that I felt good about, but other people told me I was crazy and I listened to them.
If you had to start over from zero today, how would you make your first $100,000?
Can I ask a qualifying question?
Yes.
What knowledge do I have? Do I have the knowledge that I have now?
Yes.
I think that to make the first 100,000, I would immediately find somebody that was struggling in their business and just offer to help them with anything that they needed so that I could understand the market that they were in enough
Love
to
that.
go to other customers from there.
Amazing. What's one hill you will die on when it comes to business and tech?
On the business side, never do the wrong thing for the right reason. No question. And on the tech side, I think I said it earlier, never automate something you don't understand.
And the last question, what's the most unconventional advice you've ever received that turned out to be invaluable?
Ooh, unconventional advice. This is valuable. Yeah. The piece of advice that surprised me the most was to write a bunch of blogs about things that I thought people wouldn't care about. And I did it anyway. And I was amazed at the number of people who reached out and said, can you help me with things?
Thank you so much, Vin. Vin, you've just proved that success isn't about age, it's about strategy. Your insights into navigating adversity, embracing innovation, and mastering financial strategies are invaluable. Entrepreneurs, if you're tired of being broke, confused, and stuck, then hit that subscribe button, share with a friend, follow us, because in this show, we don't do sugarcoating. We do the hard truths and big moves and the breakthroughs that actually change the game. Signing off from the Desai show, where the boldest mind reveal the biggest success secrets. Thank you.